The airport was alive with its usual chaos. Families tugging rolling suitcases, business travelers glued to glowing screens, children darting ahead of weary parents. But amid the hum of departures and arrivals, a storm was quietly brewing. Colonel. David Carter stepped into the terminal, his polished shoes clicking against the tile with a rhythm that usually went unnoticed. Today, every step felt heavier, echoing the weight pressing down on his chest. The metals pinned to his uniform glittered under the fluorescent lights, but they weren't what burdened him. The weight came from the flag-draped casket waiting, on the tarmac outside. Inside it lay the body of Private First Class Jason Reynolds, 21 years old, a life cut short before it could truly begin. Carter wasn't simply traveling. He was carrying a promise, the vow that no soldier would ever be left behind. At the airline counter, Carter laid down his military orders and ID. The clerk, a young woman with a neat bun and tired eyes, barely glanced at him. Her fingers tapped across the keyboard, then froze. A shadow flickered across her face. She asked to see the documents again, her voice thinner this time. Carter complied, sliding them forward with the steady discipline drilled into him through decades of service. He saw it immediately. The hesitation in her eyes, the glance toward her coworker, the subtle shift of her posture. Something was wrong. The murmurs began with her whisper to another agent. A supervisor stepped closer, trying to mask unease beneath a professional smile that never touched his eyes. "I'm sorry, sir. There's an issue with your ticket. We can't allow you to board." Carter didn't blink. "I'm escorting the remains of a fallen soldier. Everything is in order." His voice was even, but each word carried steel. The agent looked down, refusing to meet his gaze. "I understand, sir, but there's a security protocol. We can't override it." Protocol. That word again. A convenient shield for something unnamed. Behind Carter, the line was swelling with restless passengers. Their chatter faded as their attention locked onto the scene unfolding. A decorated colonel in full uniform denied his flight for reasons. That didn't add up. Carter stood firm, the calm of a man who had stared down worse than bureaucratic stonewalling. "Ma'am, this is not a vacation. This is an assignment. My documentation is valid. Explain to me what this protocol is." Her lips pressed into a thin line. No answer. Only another glance to the back, where airline staff whispered like conspirators. Then came the supervisor. Mid-50s, weary face, polished name tag. He folded his arms like a judge about to hand down a verdict. "Sir, I apologize for the inconvenience," he said, tone dripping with corporate politeness. "But we have certain policies in place. Unfortunately, we cannot override them." Policies. Always policies. Empty words meant to shut down questions. Carter's jaw tightened. He had sat across foreign officials who hid behind scripted answers. Politicians who cloaked lies in official language. This smelled the same. "I've escorted soldiers before," he replied, voice measured but firm. "I know the procedures. I know the rules, and there is no policy that prevents me from boarding. So I'll ask again. What is the real reason I'm being denied?" The supervisor shifted, discomfort written across his face. "It's just an extra security measure. Nothing personal. Nothing personal." Hollow words, cruel even, with a flag-draped coffin waiting outside. The silence stretched. The crowd behind Carter wasn't simply watching anymore. They were leaning in, recording, sensing something deeper. Then a voice cut through the tension. "Are you saying there's an issue with his clearance?" Carter turned slightly. A man in his 60s, face weathered from time and service, stood a few places back in line. A Marine Corps cap pulled low over his brow. A veteran. The supervisor stiffened. "No, sir. This isn't about clearance." The Marine folded his arms, voice sharp as a blade. "I've been through security more times than I can count, And I've never seen protocol stop a soldier from bringing one of our own home. So, what is it? The air shifted. Murmurs rippled through. The terminal. Phones came out, cameras rolling. A woman whispered, "This isn't right." A young man's fingers flew across his screen, live posting what he saw. The airline staff could feel it, control slipping away, truth pressing in. The original agent ducked her head, pretending to be busy, while the supervisor rubbed at his temple like a man scrambling for excuses. But Carter didn't move. He stood tall, shoulders squared, the embodiment of patience forged in battlefields where silence meant survival. Then another voice emerged, quieter, but charged with something stronger than outrage. A young woman, no more than 25, stepped forward with her phone in hand. Her eyes trembled with uncertainty, but her voice carried determination. "Sir, I don't mean to intrude, but I just want to make sure I understand. They're not letting you board?" Carter's gaze slid to her, his expression unreadable. "That's correct." Her breath caught. She hesitated, then nodded once and turned her phone toward him. The words hit like a spark to dry kindling. "I'm live right now." The young woman's words sliced through the heavy silence. "People need to see this." And with that, the dam broke. Phones lifted high. Screens glowed. Another man raised his voice, shaking his head in disbelief. "This is wrong. This man is escorting a fallen soldier." His words echoed, carrying weight no one could dismiss. A woman farther back cupped her hands to her mouth, shouting toward the counter. "Excuse me, can someone explain why he's being denied?" The line of passengers shifted uneasily, caught between hesitation and rising outrage. What had begun as hushed whispers was now a storm rolling through the terminal. The energy had shifted. The air no longer belonged to the airline staff. It belonged to the crowd. The agent behind the counter looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, trembling. She could feel the cameras trained on her, every twitch recorded, every nervous glance preserved, forever. Then the Marine stepped forward again. Done playing polite, his voice boomed steady and unflinching. The voice of a man who had buried brothers before. "I've seen a lot in my time, but I never thought I'd see the day when an American soldier, especially one escorting a fallen comrade, one time was treated like this." The words struck like artillery fire. The terminal froze. Even the overhead announcements seemed to fade away, like the airport itself held its breath. The only sounds were the quiet beeps of recording phones and the murmurs of disbelief. The Marine squared his shoulders, eyes burning with the righteous fury of generations of service. "This is a disgrace." The clerk swallowed hard. Her fingers shook as she tapped at the keyboard again, but no salvation came from the screen. The supervisor was still gone. The crowd kept growing, voices hardening. A baby began to fuss. In its stroller, but even the mother didn't move. Her eyes locked on her phone, her expression dark with disgust. Then came a voice from somewhere in the back. "It's already trending." The words hung like smoke. Carter didn't move. He didn't need to. The battlefield had shifted without him lifting a finger. The world was watching now. The young man in the hoodie scrolled furiously on his phone, then let out a whistle that carried across the gate. "Damn, this is everywhere now." The agent behind the counter stiffened at those words, her body betraying what her lips refused to admit. The woman in the denim jacket gasped as she scrolled her feed. "Oh my God, it's already on Facebook," the older Marine grunted, pulling out his own phone with a grim shake of his head. "They don't even know the kind of storm they just started." Then, right on cue, the loudspeaker crackled overhead. "Attention passengers. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Flight 237 to Phoenix will be delayed. We apologize for the inconvenience." A few groans slipped from the crowd, but no one cared. Their eyes weren't on the schedule. Their eyes were on the colonel, who stood unshaken, a silent symbol of dignity surrounded by chaos. A gasp broke the stillness. A young woman near the window thrust her phone into the air. "He's on Twitter." Screens turned. Passengers leaned closer. Bold letters screamed across her feed. They denied a black U.S. Army colonel his flight while escorting a fallen soldier's remains. "This is how we treat our heroes." "Let him fly," the numbers ticked. Upward like a detonation. Likes, comments, retweets multiplying by the second. Another ping. A new tweet. This time, from a veteran advocacy group with thousands of followers. "We are aware of the disgraceful incident happening at airport. Name. Our soldiers deserve better. Expect action." The terminal buzzed like a hive struck with a stick. The realization hit everyone at once. The airline had officially lost control. The agent behind the counter pushed away from her station, panic written across her face. Without a word, she slipped through a frosted glass door at the back. I wasn't coming back with answers. She was coming back with damage control. Carter adjusted his cap, posture unchanged. He had seen this before. Not in airports, but in war rooms where men in suits realized they had made the wrong enemy. He didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. This wasn't about him. This was about Private First Class Jason Reynolds, whose coffin still waited in silence. The crowd wasn't just watching anymore. They were waiting. The terminal was alive, electric, charged with expectation when the supervisor finally returned. But he wasn't alone. Beside him strode a man in a sleek navy suit, airline badge clipped neatly to his pocket. His steps were sharp, controlled, the gait of someone who specialized in extinguishing fires before they burned down corporations. He stopped just shy of the counter, scanning the crowd, eyes flicking to the rows of phones aimed squarely at him. He cleared his throat. "Colonel, I apologize for the miscommunication. There seems to have been an error in our system. We're working to get you on your flight immediately." Miscommunication. Carter knew that word well. It was code. It meant, "We got caught. Fix this before it costs us too much." He let the silence stretch, watching the man in the suit shift under the weight of hundreds of eyes. "An error," Carter repeated slowly. "Yes, sir. A regrettable mistake. It was not intentional." A scoff rose from the crowd. The Marine shook his head in disgust. The man in the suit tugged at his tie, clearly rattled. "We'd like to personally escort you to the gate now, Colonel," he continued. "First-class accommodations, of course. First class, as if luxury could erase humiliation." Carter's eyes slid past him to the counter, where the same agent who had denied him still stood, avoiding his gaze. She hadn't checked. She hadn't questioned. She had just said no. He exhaled slowly. "I appreciate the urgency," he said at last, "but I need to clarify something." The man straightened eagerly. "Of course." Carter's voice was calm, steady, but sharp enough to cut glass. "If no one had recorded this, if no one had spoken up, would I still be standing here right now?" A beat of silence. The representative swallowed hard. "Sir, You don't need to answer," Carter interrupted. He already knew. The entire terminal knew. A woman whispered from the crowd, voice trembling with truth. "He's right," the representative tried again, words stumbling. "Sir, we sincerely apologize." "This isn't about an apology," Carter cut in. His voice carried like a verdict. "It's about accountability," the crowd murmured, agreement swelling like a rising tide. The rep straightened, trying to salvage control. "Colonel, let us get you on your flight now." But before Carter could respond, another voice broke through. "Sir." A younger man in an airport security uniform stepped forward. He held out a phone, his face pale and tight. "I think you should see this." The man in the suit took the phone. He scrolled, his face drained of color. The Marine crossed his arms. "What? Something wrong?" No answer. But Carter didn't need one. He already knew. The story had just exploded beyond the walls of the terminal. A major news outlet had picked it up, and the headline was merciless. U.S. Army Colonel denied. Flight while escorting fallen soldier. Beneath it, shaky footage from the terminal played. Carter's calm defiance, the Marine's outrage, the crowd's voices rising in disbelief. Millions were watching. Millions were judging. The representative exhaled sharply, returning the phone with trembling hands. His voice was thinner now, a corporate shield cracking under the weight of public fury. Colonel, we deeply regret this situation. We'd like to issue a public statement clarifying. Carter cut him off, his tone steady but unyielding. The public already knows the truth. The words landed like a hammer. Silence followed, heavy and inescapable. Carter turned, eyes sweeping. Over the crowd, over the cameras still recording, capturing every flicker of his expression. Then back to the man in the suit. I don't need first class. I don't need special treatment. I need respect. And so does the soldier I am escorting, the we. Terminal stirred, voices rippling like thunder. A murmur of agreement spread, low but undeniable. The Marine gave a quiet grunt of approval, lips twisting into the faintest trace of a smile. Carter adjusted his cap. His voice was almost a whisper, but it carried like a vow. Now, let's finish this mission. But while his mission pressed forward, the airline's nightmare was only beginning. The rep nodded stiffly, powerless now. The airline had lost control. The story wasn't theirs to manage anymore. It belonged to the people, and then, the unexpected. The terminal shifted as a man in a dark blue suit walked in, his presence commanding immediate respect. He wasn't airline, he wasn't security, he was military. His ID badge glinted as he stepped forward. Colonel, he said firmly, extending his hand. Major Thomas Beckett, Department of the Army. We've been informed of the situation. Carter shook, his hand gripped strong. He didn't ask how Beckett had arrived so quickly. He already knew. The military didn't stall when it came to its own. Beckett turned, his gaze slicing into the airline representative. His voice was crisp, measured, but carried the unmistakable edge of authority. We are handling this now, Colonel Carter, and the remains of Private First Class Reynolds will not be flying commercial, the rep stammered, trying to salvage dignity. Sir, You were just about to cover your tracks, Beckett interrupted, sharp but polite, in the way a man delivers a warning before the storm breaks. He glanced back at Carter. Sir, the Pentagon has arranged a private military flight. Your transport is waiting. A collective murmur rippled through the crowd. The U.S. Army had stepped in. Carter exhaled, not in relief, but in confirmation. The mission was finally back on course. Understood, Major. Beckett's eyes cut one last time toward the airline staff. This will be addressed. Not a threat, a promise. Carter turned to the Marine who had stood beside him from the start. Appreciate you, brother. The Marine tipped his head, pride in his eyes. We look out for our own. Carter's gaze swept the room one last time. The passengers who had spoken up, who had refused to let silence be the final answer. They had turned one man's quiet humiliation into a storm the world could not ignore. He adjusted his uniform, squared his shoulders, and walked out. Not toward a boarding gate, but toward something far larger. Because for the airline, the real fallout had only begun. They thought it would fade. A press release, a carefully worded apology, a CEO on camera, rehearsed lines dripping with regret, damage control, but the people weren't buying it. News networks devoured the footage. Veterans organizations condemned the airline. Politicians demanded accountability. Hashtags called for boycotts. Their stock price plummeted within days. Customers flooded social media, hammering them with one demand: respect our soldiers. And then came the final strike. A lawsuit, filed by a coalition of veteran advocacy groups, accusing the airline of discrimination and failure to uphold protections for service members. The kind of battle that couldn't be smoothed over with scripted apologies. By the time the airline CEO appeared, his words meant nothing. A regrettable misunderstanding. Employees placed on administrative leave. Too little. Too late. Meanwhile, Colonel Carter pressed on with his mission. He stood silently as Private First Class Jason Reynolds was delivered home to his family. A grieving mother, a father holding back tears, siblings too young to fully understand. Carter didn't need headlines. He didn't need applause. What he needed, what Reynolds deserved, was respect. Respect shouldn't be conditional. It shouldn't require a viral video. It should never depend on outrage. It should be the standard. And yet, here they were. But there was something undeniable in that terminal. A Marine who spoke out, a woman who asked the hard question, a crowd that refused to stay silent. Together, they had proven a truth that cannot be buried. When people stand together, injustice has nowhere to hide. And if you believe in accountability, if you believe in honoring those who serve, then let your voice be heard. Because silence allows these moments to happen again. And next time, it may not go viral. If this story moved you, if you believe respect should never be optional, like this video, share it, and subscribe. Because the more voices we raise, the fewer injustices can hide in the dark.